have some instructions here. The first bit is about discussing the presentation we've just heard and trying to answer questions such as what struck you about the presentation? What surprised you? What did you find valuable or beneficial in what you heard? We then asked to move on to a second phase, which is about the title really of the whole forum. In the light of the discussion, you define a message of hope and a proposal for the future that will be sent to the schools. We're asked to come up with that at the end of this session, to write down our message of hope, which will be further discussed tomorrow. But if we aim to make that our principal task, perhaps we could spend 5 or 10 minutes on, if anybody has anything to say about the questionnaire, from what you've just heard in the presentation, or from what you know about it from doing it in your own schools, then I think that might be a useful exchange of information.
I would suggest that a lot of people here aren't familiar with the question.
Did we do it, Sandra? Well, it came, I am because we came to the schools. I would be I think, by the way, the work that went in fair, commend everybody involved, to me, Dominique and all the work we've done. But I would be very, very reluctant to extract information from the survey. Because, you know, when I got the survey initially, it was hard. Every survey you should be looking for particular information, and it should be clear to the people who are doing the survey what exactly the information people are looking for. That was not the case. And I would think, you know, again, I'm being very careful, I'm not in any way impugning anybody's reputation in this, but I think if a survey is going to be done into the future, that a good place to start is with the individual countries in the European province and bring it from that into a European survey, whereas in this case it was a European survey which was trying to get all the information from all the countries together.
That's the key. What came out of the workshop there, or the action plan, was all in a sense self-questioning. But if you ask people to do something, you must give them feedback in whatever piece, or you know, whether you say, well, thank you for that, and these are a few key points, but that must go back, because otherwise you'll never get a response again. So there must be an action of a survey. So that's.
I agree with that too.
I think there were too many choices.
Absolutely.
It was overload. There were too many choices. People would look at it. I mean, if I got it as a parent, I'd say, oh my goodness, I will do that tomorrow night when I have loads of time to. There was too much. It wasn't easy to. It wasn't an easy one, and you could see that because I worked on it, the computing of the.
Because I think the effort was to try and get as much to fit the broad spectrum of schools into it. And I think that's why it would have been better at the start.
Yes.
Than figure out local answers first.
Yeah.
And I think you would have got, you know, a couple of times it was said that some people didn't actually fill in part of it or missed it, or it was a very low filling out. And I think the reason wasn't they didn't want to or weren't willing to, but we're completely unsure what exactly did it want.
What the question was.
You know, I think that's a dangerous thing in a survey if you don't know what
But the question I'd ask, who generated it?
And I can't really answer the question about where the questions finally came from.
Because I think what was lacking there was an expertise in actually constructing it. The council should have said, these are the things you need to find, and you should have given it to somebody else, and they would construct a survey which is clear, simple, and it goes out that way. It would have been money well spent.
There's a
Survey monkey.
If you don't mind me saying so, because we are Irish, I think we've got the point about that. You know, there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the actual survey.
But Carl
Revised, I think.
changed the questions for all the reasons that you've been saying.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it when they were not relevant to our situation.
Yes.
It was too busy, the questionnaire. But I don't know if our results, I think, did I catch that
They were excluded.
They couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, Dominique has actually given, I've forgotten to bring,
Yes.
but she's given us an individual results from that, which I have been given.
I think there's a lesson well learned in a sense. My view would be, if it was to be done in the future, the methodology needs to be, as we say, more professional, but maybe put your objectives down and then give it to somebody who does it, who knows how to do it. I think that would be my big thing about it. It's too late now for that, but do it in a way in the future. Pick your 5 objectives, whatever the group wants, and then hand it to somebody to come up with the questions for it. That would be my big thing out of the whole, and which is a positive thing.
Yeah.
You're saying now.
And there's a final point. Often, this is unusual, that when you get handed an envelope and the envelope has to go back to school, you sometimes might not get the same answers. You might get the answers you want, but the answers that are really
Yes.
correct answers. So therefore, give it. So my belief is give it to somebody else, because then it takes away that. Well,
Subjective
when
result.
Kevin opens it, what's he
Yes.
going to see?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So that would be the point rather than the actual survey itself.
Keep it outside.
And perhaps parents need more information about the existing network in order that they might more fully participate. I'm suggesting that if parents have indicated an interest in networking, but there seems to be an information deficit, so probably what we need to do as institutions is ensure that the parents have fuller information about the network as it exists, and maybe ask them how they might contribute.
And I would guarantee no matter what survey you're going to get a range of answers that couldn't possibly make any sense when it's not put onto a page, because it's a macro thing. Ask them about the Irish government, they'll tell you pretty quickly what their views of the Irish government is, but then ask them about the department.
I think there was an idea behind it that we are trying to offer people something which is wider than just
Correct.
what one school offers. And to say we are doing this because we're part of a larger group who share the same
Yes.
values. And I think that it was felt that that could be
I see that.
beneficial to the parents. They would like to hear that. You know.
Part of his sales pitch was the wider network, and he actually uses that, and I think it's actually a good picture. You know, that idea that it's a bit like when in my own business, when I talk about business, I can actually talk about a global business.
Yes.
And all of a sudden people go, oh, and you can see that sort of reaction.
Yeah.
And I think it is that European network and the bigger
Yes.
network is really beneficial.
It is, of course.
But it depends on the time and the place, and I think if you can get the values, the first part you said about just asking parents about why and where from,
Yeah.
what makes all the sense.
That would be
That's
good.
that's a key.
That's a key.
But then you build on it, and then you expand, and people go, oh right, so it's part.
Something I got from what I've heard is about the fact that the Marists in the first place arose post-French Revolution, and very interesting historically that there was a time of crisis in Europe when there was a need. The Marists basically responded to the real needs of the society around them. They're still around almost 200 years later, and we're now in another crisis, and I thought it was very interesting the way it put the present day crisis is probably not worse than what they faced back then. Maybe there was more chaos, and people are looking for order out of chaos. And I think again, I really believed, thinking about that, the Marist ethos and the whole Marist spirit can continue on into the future. It adapts, it changes to meet the challenges, but if it did it before, we learn from history it can do it again. So my thinking was along those lines, so if that's any help in terms of where it's going.
Successful the schools are still operating in an environment that really you'd think we should be closing the door and saying we've less money, we've less this, we've whatever. And I look around and say at the staff at Chanel and see the outstanding work that's been done, despite the world media saying the teachers are public servants and all that sort of thing going on, and yet every day the door opens and we welcome the lads in to a safe environment, a learning institution where people are completely committed to the lads that they walk in the door. I think it's an extraordinary achievement in time of crisis, that you still see that every day. And it's almost a stability is being offered in a difficult time. They wouldn't know the difficulties we've had trying to open the doors and put people in classes. They wouldn't be aware of that.
The parents and teachers and priests, and together they're saying this community is worth keeping. And that they're not really that concerned. It's a bit like there's a storm on in America or there's a storm on somewhere else, but we're only worried about the fact that it's raining outside here and we could get flooded. And in that sense, the schools are individual independent units, all of whom have different problems, because CUS's problems and Dundalk's problems and your problems, from what we heard today, and our friend in Italy's problems. So that goes back to the issue of the questionnaire, because the questionnaire, if it's sent out, just think of those different circumstances. The questionnaire is only relevant to a particular school, a particular place at a particular time. And just to reflect back, or not reflect back, but tie the two things together, the Marist brothers, having a bigger operation, as I've discovered, than yourselves, have been involved in this process for a long time, because they have 77 countries and all of this. And in the footsteps of Marcelin, which is the book that they have, and it might be worth, and we said that we'd get Kevin one certainly for it, you got it. But when you see it, the way it's structured is it was a series of conversations with lay people. It's written with lay people. It's not written by the brothers to say this is the way it is. And I think that the process you've started with this questionnaire, the good news is it's only through conversation. The bad news is it could take you 10 years to get to the point of you're in the footsteps of Father Colin or whatever the particular thing is. So there are the 2 points. I do think the institutional church problem, you have to ignore it to some extent at an individual school level, and that's got to be dealt with by somebody. And I do think the conversation has been really, really positive.
I just had 3 words: listen, hear the message that you're, and action.
My thought was that, which is the one you made, I think, that the beginning of the marriage was to respond to a need of the time, and it's still possible to do that again.
They did it before.
I think what will get us through, certainly at school level, will be energy and commitment. Because more and more you need to give more energy to it, and you need to make sure you're committed and know where you're going. And there's such positivity within that energy to move forward.